Officer Ray Collins, a veteran of the Port Authority K-9 unit at JFK International Airport, had a typical start to the day, with his boots echoing across the polished tiles of Terminal 4 and Titan, his German shepherd, pacing quietly by his side, nose twitching, always alert and loyal, a shadow of muscle and instinct honed through years of training. It was near noon, and Ray was already on his third circuit of the day, sweeping security lines and restroom corridors, casually scanning faces while Titan sniffed at bags, carts, corners, and anything that might hide the forbidden or the dangerous. After 14 years of routine, Ray wasn't expecting anything out of the ordinary today, not during the downtime between holiday rushes, and certainly not today. However, something happened as they approached the edge of a Hudson News kiosk near Gate B23 that would alter everything. Titan froze in mid-step with his ears pressed forward and his body tense like a drawn bow. He then let out a low growl that turned into a sharp, frantic bark that broke the airport's ambient hum like glass hitting tile. Some of the stunned travelers gasped as they turned toward the sound, while others instinctively backed away. Titan had locked eyes on a tall, blonde woman wearing dark sunglasses and a navy trench coat, her hair curled flawlessly over her shoulders, one hand cradling her obviously pregnant belly, while the other held brown paper shopping bags from the terminal's upscale food court. Titan lunged forward, leash taut, barking with an urgency Ray had only ever seen during actual bomb drills, despite the fact that she was not running or acting out. "Hey! Easy!" Titan was now clawing at the woman, and barking like his life depended on it as Ray called and pulled the leash back. The woman froze in place, her lips parting in confusion and insult. "Excuse me, but what the hell is happening?" she demanded. Her voice refined, East Coast educated, with a practiced tone of someone used to being respected. People started recording with their phones. Others moved toward the scene. A TSA agent started to walk over. The dog's behavior was unjustified by all visual indicators, but Titan's record was spotless, and Ray could feel the heat rising in his ears. Ray gave a firm but polite order. "Ma'am, please set your bags down and step to the side," pointing to the security area with one hand and attempting to calm Titan with the other. "Are you kidding me? Because I have to catch a flight, and I am pregnant." I said, "It will only take a minute." Ray tried to keep his tone neutral, because he was aware of how things could get out of hand. My dog is trained to detect potential threats, and his reaction suggests what? That I'm putting something in a croissant-filled paper bag? Under her sunglasses, her eyes narrowed, she yelled, "This is profiling." Ray replied, "No, ma'am, this is protocol," even though he was beginning to wonder if Titan had picked up on something environmental, residue on a nearby individual, or was there something about this woman that his instincts couldn't see but the dog could? Titan didn't bark like this over nothing. A man who was smuggling lithium-ion batteries in a triple-lined suitcase with fabric softener had once been caught by him. Another time, he alerted to a jacket that had cocaine sewn into the lining, and it took hours for forensics to confirm he was right. Ray started the radio. He said, "Unit 5, requesting assistance at Terminal 4, possible alert, need backup for passenger inspection. Gate B23, as the woman reluctantly set her bags down, her polished composure slightly flaring as the barking continued. A young couple nearby looked frightened. A young boy began to cry. Ray's supervisor arrived within minutes, followed by two more officers who quickly formed a small perimeter. "Name?" The woman was asked by one of them. She replied rigidly, "Cassandra Lee. I work as a marketing advisor. There is nothing wrong with me. Your dog is malfunctioning." However, Titan was not acting improperly. He had switched from aggressive barks to low, guttural growls, and he was pacing around the paper bags with tension in every step, just like he did when finding explosive residue. While another officer ran her boarding pass, they both scanned her ID. No red flags. She was flying business class to San Diego. No previous arrests, no international travel in the last 90 days. But Ray couldn't shake the look in Titan's eyes, a look that said, "You're missing something." Ray caught the supervisor's attention. "Take her to secondary screening. The bags will be examined by forensics." Cassandra threw up her hands. "This is absurd. 8 months into my pregnancy. What do you think I'm hiding exactly?" Ray responded, still preventing Titan from speaking. "We're not accusing you of anything. We simply need to be sure." As they escorted her toward a glass-walled screening room, Titan suddenly broke free of Ray's grip. Just for a second. But in that second, the dog lunged and shoved his body between Cassandra and her bags, barking so furiously now that officers began drawing closer with hands near their holsters. Ray was able to resecure Titan after Cassandra instinctively backed off. But the tension was at its height. "He is attempting to bite me." She wept. Ray said with a firm voice, "No, he's trying to stop you." After that, there was a prolonged, awkward silence as Cassandra was taken into custody and her shopping bags were contained. When she left the room, Titan stopped barking, but his gaze remained fixed on the door she had entered through. Ray knelt beside him, hand resting on the dog's side, which still trembled. "Boy, what are you telling me?" he whispered, alarmed by Titan's increasingly private behavior. The incident report was filed, passengers dispersed, and Cassandra was brought in for questioning, where she continued to deny any wrongdoing. "This is a lawsuit waiting to happen," she warned. "You all better hope that this stress doesn't harm my baby." Meanwhile, the bags were scanned. Nothing explosive. No narcotics. There are no metal parts. Cosmetics, a paperback novel, and a few small food items. Everything is tidy. However, Ray was dissatisfied. Titan wasn't satisfied. Titan was still panting more forcefully than usual, and his pupils were dilated as the veterinarian technician arrived to check on the dog, as is customary following a high-stress alert. After checking his hydration and taking his temperature, the veterinarian frowned. "He's been exposed to something," she said quietly. "He is breathing slowly. Could be a toxin or irritant." "You said..." Ray said, "More than that." He barked as if he was aware that something bad was about to happen. The vet gave a nod. "Permit me to run some blood tests." Ray felt a punch to the chest when the thought finally hit him. What if Titan wasn't reacting to what she was carrying, but rather to what she was covered in? Something on her skin, clothes, and hands. A chemical, a compound. Something that was missed by the scanners as well. With wide eyes, he abruptly stood. "We need to test those bags for chemical residue. Immediately." However, it would be too late already. Even as Officer Ray Collins watched Cassandra lease it across from two plainclothes federal agents who had taken over questioning after the dog's blood work came back abnormal and showed traces of a rare organophosphate compound, often used in agricultural pesticides, but also flagged by the Department of Homeland Security as a key ingredient in prototype neurotoxins developed in off-book labs during the Cold War. Ray's stomach dropped into his boots because Titan didn't just sniff danger. He absorbed it. Cassandra spoke in clipped, irritated tones as she sat upright with one hand protecting her belly. "I told you, but I have no idea how your dog reacted. Perhaps the smell of my lunch bothered him." Agent Morales, a woman with sharp eyes and a softer tone, pressed again. "Ms. Lee, our concern is not just your bags, but your skin, your clothes, and any surface you may have touched while in this airport. Do you comprehend?" Cassandra did not respond despite giving a slight head shake and clenching her lips. Ray and Captain Doyle, his supervisor, watched technicians swab every item Cassandra had carried in the brown paper shopping bags, including croissant bag with grease stains, the cap of a water bottle, and even the small printed napkin in Terminal D with the logo of a Belgian cafe. It was a forensic ballet, delicate and exhaustive, and Ray's fingers clenched tighter with each passing moment because deep down he no longer believed this woman was innocent. Her performance was too perfect, her indignation too calculated, and more than that, Titan had never failed him. Not once. The technician frantically whispered into his communications as the lights dimmed and the sample was rushed into containment as the room's mood changed from procedural to alarm when the first trace amounts of a VX-related compound were detected on the wax paper that was wrapping a sandwich inside the bag. In federal circles, VX was a chemical nerve agent with a name that barely needed to be explained. It was so deadly that a pinprick on bare skin could kill the body's nervous system in minutes. Ray's lips became dry. When Titan tried to warn the team, he must have taken it in through his nose or inhaled it. If they didn't listen quickly enough, the very dog that barked to save them might die. Captain Doyle gave Ray a grave look as he turned to face him. We must be aware of her whereabouts. To whom she spoke, the things she touched. Ray nodded and bolted down the corridor, retracing Cassandra's steps to the terminal, playing back every image in his mind like a reel. Gate B23, the bookstore kiosk, the self-serve coffee counter. She had leaned on a railing made of metal. She brushed shoulders with a boy in a red hoodie near the arrivals board. At the bakery, she paid with cash. Her hands had touched everything and lingered. Ray pulled surveillance footage with the help of the security team, zooming in frame by frame. Cassandra appeared to purposefully drag her fingertips along the surface of a row of chairs as she entered the main concourse at 10:32 a.m. She had a brief conversation with the janitor at 10:37, and he gave her the napkin she had allegedly dropped. She used a toddler stroller at 10:39 to steady herself as she passed. Ray felt the blood drain from his face. "Jesus," he whispered, slamming his palm on the desk. She didn't have a bomb on her. She was a bomb. As they pumped his system with atropine and pralidoxime in a last-ditch effort to flush the nerve agent, Titan lay in a temperature-controlled, dark unit in the on-site veterinary clinic. His breathing was shallow. His muscles were twitching, and an 4-line ran from his leg. The veterinarian offered a melancholy comment. He might not make it to the night, but if he does, it will be because of how strong his training is and how much he wants to fight. Ray knelt next to the cage and gently pressed his forehead against the glass. "Boy, I'm so sorry. You were correct. You attempted to rescue us." Back in the terminal, panic started to ripple beneath the surface of the comm announcements and gate calls. A strange burning sensation on her fingers was reported by one of the bakery clerks. The janitor who had handed Cassandra napkins collapsed during a smoke break, frothing at the mouth. The boy in the red hoodie had boarded a connecting flight to Atlanta. CDC agents were now being dispatched. Even though the terminal hadn't been shut down yet, a storm cloud of biological contamination hung in the air. The realization of his worst fears in slow motion terrified Ray. Cassandra remained impassive during questioning. She replied calmly, "You have no proof I did anything wrong. You have some chemicals on a napkin? That is not my work. I can't be held by you." But the agents were no longer asking. They were preparing for something far worse. Word came in from Atlanta. A child had collapsed in the terminal shortly after arriving. Medical teams rushed in. The connection to JFK was confirmed. Cassandra's face was being broadcast at airports nationwide under the label, "Person of high suspicion. Do not approach without PPE." But what Cassandra had done, and how close they had come to letting her walk right past them, both haunted Ray. Had it not been for Titan's barks, desperate, guttural, instinctive, how many more would have been infected? Ray now realized Titan hadn't seen Cassandra as a suspect. He saw her as a threat, a movement vector, a bomb with the shape of a mother. He stood behind the glass once more when he returned to the interview room. Cassandra, now sipping water, sat quietly. She had subtly altered her narrative. Instead of protesting, she was acting dumb. "I don't know why you people are obsessed with me," she said. "Do you think I'm a chemical terrorist? I'm pregnant. There are women who've used their own children as shields in war zones." Agent Morales replied evenly, "Please excuse us if your stomach does not cancel out the facts." But Cassandra just smiled, and Ray saw for the first time a glimmer of something icy and deliberate, like a mask slipping out of place. She was aware she had done this with intent. Additionally, she believed she would not be caught. However, she had underestimated Titan, the one creature in that airport who could not be deceived, manipulated, or reasoned with. And now, that dog was dying because they hadn't listened soon enough. Ray pressed both palms to the glass, breathing hard. He was not going to let it end here. Titan cannot use it. For the janitor, not. Not for the boy in the red hoodie. Cassandra was more than just a possibility. She was the start of something. There was a plan. Something much larger. And whatever her next move was, he had to stop it before more people paid the price. Officer Ray Collins sat slumped on a plastic chair just outside the glass enclosure, his badge loosely clipped to his belt, head bowed, hand resting on the cold floor, fingertips barely brushing the edge of the cage, as if hoping the connection might remind his partner to keep fighting, for breath, for life, for justice, for the truth that only he had seen when no one else had. Titan's cage was silent with the exception of the constant mechanical beep of his heart monitor. The airport had gone into controlled panic overnight. The janitor had died at 2:37 a.m., and the bakery worker had slipped into a coma by sunrise. The toxic exposure confirmed to have originated from contact with neurotoxic compound transferred by bearskin, the kind of chemical warfare Ray thought belonged in spy novels or war zones, not terminal walkways and coffee counters. Cassandra Lee, if that was even her real name, had stopped speaking altogether once the FBI toxicology team confirmed VX-like residue not just in her bags, but on her gloves, her coat sleeve, and even her phone screen. Her fingerprints matched those of Elena Kosharova, a Russian-born biochemist who had disappeared from a research institution in Prague 2 years prior and was suspected to have joined a radical splinter group obsessed with mass disruption strategies. The full portrait of her emerged slowly and terrifyingly from interagency intelligence. Elena, now posing as Cassandra, had crossed at least 5 countries undetected, likely smuggling trace amount of nerve agent and microcompounds bonded to everyday materials such as lipstick tubes, paper bags, and napkins. Once inside the United States, she had likely transferred those compounds through brief, casual contact to high-traffic surfaces in multiple terminals. It was brilliant in its horror, elegant in its evil, and Ray couldn't stop thinking about how none of the systems in place had detected it. No scanner, no agent, no camera, just one dog. One dog who had sensed something that no other dog could. He was overworked and underappreciated. That dog was now barely hanging on for dear life. Ray murmured to himself as he stood in front of the digital map that was being displayed in the task force briefing room. He barked because he knew, he said. Cassandra's path through Terminal 4 was depicted by dots with timestamps. The bookstore where she had put a magazine back on the shelf, the Starbucks counter where she had smilingly returned a drink, and the bathroom sink that she had touched briefly before leaving. Each member of the cleaning crew that provided service to those areas had been placed in isolation. Symptoms had appeared in 2 more. The little boy in the red hoodie? In Atlanta, he was found unconscious and showing signs of nerve toxicity. This was now being classified as a Tier 1 event by the CDC, which is usually reserved for bioterrorism or the release of pathogens without proper control. But none of that mattered to Ray unless Titan made it through. He left the room silently and went back to the veterinary unit, where a young technician told him that Titan's vitals had dropped once more. We gave him another injection of atropine, but if the toxin reached the spinal cord, she didn't finish. Ray placed his hand gently on the dog's muzzle and whispered, "You knew, didn't you, boy? You're always aware." Back at headquarters, the agents worked continuously, scraping every record, alias, and security scan. However, they were still unable to locate the source, how Cassandra had entered the country undetected, or whether she had already given someone else her materials. That's when Ray remembered something. The way Titan hadn't just barked at Cassandra, but also at the bag she carried. It wasn't just her. It was something or someone she was near. He hurried back to the evidence room and looked over the bag's contents once more, which included lunch items, a book, receipts, a small travel journal, and a folded piece of paper that had stickers on it from children. Where did this originate? He demanded. That didn't appear in the initial report. The technician verified the custody chain. It was discovered hidden in the sandwich bag, missing from the initial scan. Resembles a child's drawing. Ray carefully unfolded the page. It showed a crude crayon sketch of an airplane with stick figures inside. It read, in shaky handwriting, "My mommy and I are going to America." Ray's thoughts also suddenly turned to the baby in the stroller. Cassandra had received something in addition to passing the poison. Information, possibly a code, a possible instruction for delivery. The drawing wasn't innocent. It was a message. He rushed to the surveillance room, grabbed footage from the 10:30 a.m. window, and zoomed in once more on the moment Cassandra set her stroller down. The kid carried a small backpack. On the other side of the stroller, holding the handle, was a man, dark cap, sunglasses, no clear face, who brushed her shoulder as she passed. It was a transfer. Cassandra had used the whole thing as a trap to draw attention to herself, while her partner got away with whatever she had passed him. Additionally, Titan had attempted to stop her not because she posed a threat herself, but rather because she had ties to the real one. Ray immediately issued an alert. Suspect may have used the incident as a diversion. Look for a man in his mid-40s who is traveling with a toddler and wears a dark ball cap. Last seen close to Gate B. 3 hours later, they discovered the man, who had already checked into a hotel under a false name and was in Toronto. Interpol entered. Inside his suitcase, they found 6 sealed packages lined with fabric softener and plastic, each containing a refined version of the same nerve compound found on Cassandra's hands. They were intended to be distributed. The entire strategy was close to succeeding, but not at all, due to a single dog. A dog now lying between life and death. The media poured in. The bark that saved the airport made headlines across all major media outlets when news anchors aired footage of Titan barking, paused mid-lunge, with his eyes fixed on Cassandra. Ray, who despises being the center of attention, was forced into interviews, but all he could talk about was Titan. According to one reporter, he stated, "I don't care if I'm never recognized. Just keep in mind his name. Keep in mind Titan." Titan's response was praised by the Department of Homeland Security in a statement as instrumental in thwarting a mass casualty event. The president referred to Titan as a hero in a photo that he tweeted. But until Ray was able to look his partner in the eye once more, none of that mattered to Ray. That evening, as the sky turned purple over the tarmac, Ray stood alone in the kennel, watching Titan's chest rise ever so slightly. The vet entered quietly. She whispered, "He's stable. Still touch and go, but he's fighting." Leaning down, Ray wiped his face with the back of his hand. "Boy, you knew that. You were aware before we were. I swear, I will never again question your bark." Titan didn't say anything. His paw, however, twitched just a little bit. It was adequate. Officer Ray Collins found himself staring at a television screen in the corner of the airport's debriefing room, his uniform rumpled and his face drawn, as a grim-faced news anchor listed the latest victims of the neurotoxin attack, for hospitalized in critical condition in 3 states, including the little boy in the red hoodie from Atlanta, who remained unconscious with signs of severe neurological damage, a janitor from JFK, who never made a home, and all of the victims were connected to Elena Kasharova, the woman who posed as Cassandra Lee, a pregnant traveler, and calmly and deliberately distributed poison through one of the busiest airports in the world with a smile. The attack's sheer audacity and silent brutality left the nation in shock. Even though the CDC and FBI swiftly moved to secure Cassandra's co-conspirator in Toronto, trace financial transactions through shell companies, and identify the synthetic origin of the used compound, it did little to comfort those who were already grieving or fighting for their lives in sterile ICU wings. Even though Ray had assisted in preventing something catastrophic from happening, the truth was straightforward and cruel. Titan had known. As a result, Ray felt the weight of guilt pressing like a slab of concrete on his chest. Titan knew much earlier than the experts, the data, or the labs. They had not listened quickly enough to him when he had tried to warn them all. At the Port Authority's emergency K-9 veterinary unit, Titan remained in critical condition, hooked up to machines, and battling neurological tremors from the toxin exposure. Ray slept with Titan's paw gently wrapped in his callous hand every night, refusing to leave his side. The monitor's beeps sounded like a countdown. It was a quiet prayer with each breath. Ray felt physically ill when the CDC confirmed that over 50 surfaces at JFK tested positive for microscopic VX variants, including chair rails, door handles, and napkin dispensers. He realized how many lives had been saved by a dog's bark that was louder than the bureaucracy around him. Once a bustling location, the airport was now a cautious and eerie place. Upstairs were glass partitions. In hazmat suits, cleaning crews worked overtime. K-9 officers received nervous glances from travelers. Titan, on the other hand, had become a national symbol, so no one anymore feared the dogs. The footage of him lunging, barking, and intercepting Cassandra's path was shown again on news segments. Specials titled "The Dog Who Knew" aired on talk shows. "Let Titan's courage remind us of the unseen guardians who walk among us," the president said. But the irony of it all chewed at Ray. Titan was being remembered as a hero, and yet he was dying, alone in a steel cage under fluorescent lights, because the very people he protected hadn't trusted his instincts fast enough. Ray was most frightened by Cassandra's face as she sat in an undisclosed federal holding facility. Her pregnancy a calculated disguise that had earned her the benefit of the doubt at every checkpoint. He thought back to her icy smile and how she had seemed to dare them to believe her. She never needed to set anything off because trust was her weapon. She poured herself coffee with the same ease that she poisoned handrails. Until Titan. They had all looked the other way. Friday, the boy in Atlanta coded. A report that Ray later read said that his mother's screams could be heard throughout the hospital. That night, Ray was alone in his car, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white, his teeth clenched as hot, and silent tears streamed down his face. That boy could have been anyone's child. Titan had attempted to halt it. Ray whispered into the silence of his parked cruiser. You were trying to save him, weren't you? Days passed. Titan's situation did not change. Ray kept watch. Then, in the early hours of Saturday morning, well before dawn, Ray was jolted awake by the soft click of claws on the kennel floor. He suddenly stood up. Titan, groggy but upright, was trying to stand. Hey, buddy, it's okay. Ray choked, stumbling to his feet. The vet rushed him moments later, speechless. That's impossible, she whispered. He is moving. Titan wobbled but locked eyes with Ray, tail twitching once. It wasn't much, but it was everything. Titan was a miracle, not just a survivor. The airport community banded together. A fund was started in his name. Nationwide, school children began sending letters. One note, scribbled in crayon, read, Dear Titan, thank you for saving my dad. He works at the airport. I love you. But even in this growing wave of praise and healing, the bitter truth lingered. They had only just managed to stop Cassandra's plan. It would have been worse if the dog hadn't barked. Ray hadn't trusted him, and the janitor hadn't died. Far worse. Over the next week, Titan slowly gained strength, but his gait became a little stiffer and his reflexes became weaker. However, when Ray brought him back to the terminal for the first time, the passengers broke into cheers. TSA agents saluted. Some wept. Titan, on the other hand, did not bark. Rather, he walked alongside Ray in quiet dignity, his presence serving as a constant reminder of what could have been. Ray gave a small press statement that day, voice cracked but clear. This dog saved hundreds of lives, possibly more. But I want everyone to remember this. He wasn't barking to attack her. He wasn't being aggressive by barking. He was attempting to safeguard us when he barked. And we almost didn't listen. We must never repeat that error. As the media moved on and the investigation wrapped up with more arrests overseas, Ray sat in his kitchen one night. Titan lying beside him with his head on Ray's boot and whispered into the stillness, You did good, boy. I'm so damn proud of you. For now, the nation was safe once more. However, Ray would never forget the dog's knowledge. Officer Ray Collins stood beside his partner Titan, who now sat tall on a low platform draped in blue cloth, a bronze medal hanging from his collar, his coat recently brushed, but still showing the faintest signs of his long recovery. The small shave patch on his leg from fore insertion, the slower blink of his eyes as he adjusted to the lingering neurological tremors, and the slight hesitation in his back paw when he shifted weight. The ceremony was held on a crisp none of that mattered the crowd gathered before them, because to them, Titan was no longer just a patrol dog. He was a national symbol, a sentinel who had barked against the silence of bureaucracy and hesitation, and in doing so had saved lives. In the weeks since the airport poison plot was exposed, more details had emerged, painting a terrifying picture of what might have happened if Titan hadn't reacted. Elena Kasharova, now fully identified in charge of conspiracy to commit acts of terrorism using weapons of mass destruction, had been working with a global network that intended to release the same compound in coordinated attacks at 6 major airports. The man in Toronto had been scheduled to pass vials of the VX variant chemical to couriers positioned in Seattle, Miami, and London. And only through Titan's warning and Ray's pursuit had the plot been dismantled before it could claim hundreds, maybe thousands, of lives. Today, we don't just honor a dog. We honor a partner, a protector, and a patriot, said DHS Director Laura Hensley through the podium microphone. Titan was frozen in mid-bark, head raised and tense, just as it appeared in the now iconic footage that was broadcast worldwide. Standing behind her behind a custom bronze statue covered in black velvet. Below the sculpture was a plaque. Titan, the dog who barked when no one else did. March 12th, 2025, Terminal 4. Titan perked up his ears a little when he heard the applause, and he looked up at Ray as if to inquire, "Is it over now?" "Yeah, buddy," Ray said as he sat down next to him and ran his thick neck with his hand. "You completed your task. Now you can unwind." For Ray, the days that followed were strange. Quiet, reflective, and filled with a pain he hadn't anticipated. Not exactly grief, but a kind of loneliness brought on by realizing that Titan had changed him. Not just how he perceived the security of his job or the fragility of trust, but also how he comprehended instinct, loyalty, and the price of being fired too quickly. He frequently reflected on that moment, recalling how Cassandra had appeared offended, pregnant, and vulnerable, as well as how close he had come to apologizing and ignoring Titan's signal. He was more haunted by it than the bodies or the footage. What would happen if they had left? What if Titan had given up? He hadn't, though. Titan had continued, desperate, writhing and barking, to defend rather than attack. Ray spoke at schools, veteran events, and conferences for law enforcement in the weeks that followed because of that memory. He didn't care about fame. Titan's was the only story he told. Ray admitted once in a televised interview, he wasn't the strongest K9 I've worked with. He didn't run the fastest. However, his soul never gave up. When we stopped paying attention, he kept barking. We were saved by that. 10 days after going into a coma, the Atlanta boy miraculously awoke. His mother wrote Ray a letter that arrived folded in a lavender envelope. A crayon drawing of Titan with a superhero cape inside read, "Thank you for saving me," in shaky writing. It was attached with tape to the inside of Ray's locker alongside a picture of Titan as a puppy. Cassandra, Elena, remained behind multiple layers of security in a maximum security facility, where her healthy newborn child was placed in foster care and protected from the public eye. She declined legal representation, interviews, and court appearances. A ghost that was close to destroying the world. Titan's bark, in contrast to her silence, reverberated louder than ever. The airport installed permanent statues at all 5 major terminals, each one with a bronze German shepherd sitting watch beneath the inscription. Alert. Loyal. Until it was too late, nobody heard. Ray retired from active patrol 3 months later, but not because he was tired, because Titan was. The dog needed rest, time, a backyard instead of a kennel, a quiet home with sunlit windows and soft carpet. Ray moved to a small house upstate and turned his backyard into Titan's sanctuary, his retirement reward. They walked the trails each morning, now at a slower but still peaceful pace. Every night, Ray sat on the porch with a cup of coffee and Titan curled at his feet, both of them staring out into the woods, listening to the silence. Not long after, Congress passed the Titan Act, a bill allocating emergency federal funding to expand K9 training, toxin detection, and rapid biological response units in public infrastructure. Ray was absent from the signing. He did not have to. He'd already watched the real change happen in the eyes of travelers who no longer flinched when a dog barked, but looked instead for what it meant. Titan enjoyed steak, scratches, and silence for the rest of his life with Ray by his side. When he passed peacefully in his sleep one morning, the whole country mourned. At JFK, the flags were flown at half-staff. Ray buried him in his backyard beneath an oak tree next to a small plaque that said, "He tried to warn us." In addition, on March 12th of each year, Ray went to Terminal 4 in memory, not in uniform, and sat quietly next to the bronze statue where Titan still barked forever. He was silent. He did not weep. He simply whispered, "You saved them, boy," and placed one dog treat at the base. "You saved everyone."